7 at the World Trade Center was a 47-story building with a steel frame. No airplane crashed into it, nor did the towers fall onto it. However, this building disintegrated on September 11th.
More on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know, but New York very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working.
July 24th, 2001, Larry A. Silverstein, who already owned World Trade Center 7, signs a $3.2 billion 99-year lease on the entire World Trade Center complex 6 weeks before 9/11. Included in the lease is a $3.5 billion insurance policy, specifically covering acts of terrorism.
PBS has a documentary called America Rebuilds, in which Larry Silverstein, the landlord of Building 7, explains what happened.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
That video is on my website. It's downloadable. Anybody can download that thing to a DVD and copy it and use it. I use it when I go lobby Congress. Like I say, I was in Barack Obama's office. We went around to several offices. And you know, when you go into somebody's office, you're not going to get them to sit down with you for 2 hours and watch loose change. But 3 minutes, you can get them to sit still. Have it in your laptop or stick it in their DVD player in their conference room. They've all got one. And play the dumb thing. Because I don't think there's anybody that can watch that and believe the government story.
Does it, and it details the thermite, nanothermite, or is it?
No, I made this before the nanothermite came out. I mean, that's further proof. But all this does is talk about Larry Silverstein and his decision to pull it. It talks about, I love the BBC announcing the collapse before it happened.
You mean the one with the building in the background?
Right over her left shoulder, yeah. And finally, of course, just one after another view of Building 7 coming down, in what appears to be the controlled demolition of an intact building with no visible fires.
Yes. And that was the basis of the story of the reflecting pool, by the way. Building 7 was the smoking gun, and honors your work. I'd like to mention about the, since I mentioned about the nanothermite.
I was going to ask you about that.
And it's, it's basically, there was a research done by Stephen Jones and International, Niels Harrit, and others. Let me have it right here. This work was published in the Open Chemistry and Physics Journal, and the title of the paper was...
Prominent peer-reviewed journal.
Active thermitic material discovered in dust from the 9/11 World Trade Center catastrophe. And one of the authors, Neil Harrit, in a German interview in May 2009 said, "There are no experts on nanothermite without connections to the military. This stuff has only been prepared under military contracts in the U.S. And probably in bigger allied countries. This is secret military research. It was not prepared in a cave in Afghanistan." And that's the only thing that could explain the way the building came down. And now that it's discovered, you would think it wouldn't be known all over. But here there is a major censorship of what's really going on.
Yeah, I'd like to just take a minute to explain to folks why we're still talking about 9/11 9 years after the fact. And the reason is very simple. We have ongoing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Over 5,000 of our finest young men and women have died in those conflicts. Over 40,000 of our injured soldiers, their lives will never be the same. Tens of thousands of our young men and women have serious mental illnesses because of what they have seen and what they have done. Hundreds of thousands have been exposed to depleted uranium and will suffer lives of pain and disability and will father thousands of children with severe birth defects. The military is totally demoralized and stretched. The VA system is underfunded and overwhelmed. The National Guard and Reserves, tour after tour, destroying lives for even the lucky ones that come back home. Our national treasury is depleted. Our civil rights are being taken away with the Patriot Act and all of that. All of it blamed on 9/11. We have churches teaching hatred of Muslims. They don't worship the same God, and they this and that. And this country is suffering because of the lie of 9/11. If we can get the truth out, if people can understand that we have been lied to, that these wars had no basis in fact, there was no reason for these wars except the profitability of multinational oil companies, and geopolitics on a grand scale, seizing Iraq as a staging base for controlling Iran and Syria and Lebanon and Saudi Arabia and the southern Russian republics around the Baltic and the Black Sea, and $10 trillion worth of oil and gas, which now is probably worth about $60 trillion. If people understand that giving our sons and our daughters and our freedoms and the cash of our grandchildren for generations has been for profits for a tiny fraction of the wealthy elite, maybe people will rise up and say, okay, I want to know what happened and how it happened and who done it.
Right.
Because the 9/11 Commission was never asked that, and we have never been told that, and by God, we need to know.
And what do you think about the right versus the left elements in Barack Obama? I mean, everybody is, is this just to distract people, and they get different types of people coming in to continue the same methods? And even the peace movement has been unable to deal with the 9/11 as the cause, even though Barack Obama says it directly, you know, this is why we're doing this, they won't touch it, and they're almost like offended at a 9/11 truth. They're working with them, saying, why don't you work with us too? It hasn't happened
I work with a lot of peace groups. I've been sort of full-time whistleblower and troublemaker within the peace movement for 27 years. And it really pains me that there are parts of the peace movement that won't have anything to do with the 9/11 truth movement, even though if it weren't for the 9/11 lies, we wouldn't have the wars we're contending with.
Well, why?
And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure whether they just can't believe that people somewhere within the bowels of our government could do anything that evil. To kill 3,000 of our own people. But then my comeback to that is, open your eyes. Those folks have killed over 5,000 of our own people fighting their dumb wars.